Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no, seeing no public comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, I hadn't heard any proposed changes. If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Swakowski, support by Mr. Caprell. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda is announcements. I do have a couple of announcements. The Macomb County Health Department Drug Disposal Program will be having a medication disposal event this Friday, May 17th, at the Tucker Senior Center from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Additional information about this program is available on the website. The Harrison Township Environmental Committee is having the free electronic recycling event on Saturday, May 18th, at Tucker Senior Center from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's a whole list available on the website of what materials they will accept. The Harrison Township Public Library will be having their Tales with Tales event on Saturday, May 18th from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Each child will get 15 minutes to read with Patty, a therapy dog. The Nautical Coast Cleanup, sponsored by the Harrison Township Environmental Committee, will be held on Saturday, May 18th, and this Sunday, May 19th. Locations for cleanup will include Waterfront Park, the Spillway and Tucker Park, the bay by the water plant for Mount Clemens, Riviera Street Bay, the day sail ramp around Metro Beach, and the Harley Ensign site. There'll be a gathering on Sunday with entertainment provided by the River Boat Ramblers. For more information, visit our township website at www.harrison-township.org, and information regarding pre-registration can be found by calling 586-469-4848. The Harrison Township Historical Commission will be having a museum open house on Saturday, June 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. with a ribbon cutting ceremony at 1 p.m. The museum is located on Lance Cruz, just behind the football field. For information, you can call 586-463-1754. Harrison Township would like to improve our website, and you can help. If anyone has photos of the township that they would like to see incorporated into our site, please email them to the Deputy Supervisor at adymczYk@harrisontownship.org. There's also a link on the website for the deputy. We're looking for photos of landmarks, maybe natural features, animals, things like that. I know someone had submitted a beautiful picture of a bald eagle. So anything you have, let us know, and we'd be happy to display it in the township. Also, I know Parks and Rec had an event Saturday. Mr. Caprell, would you like to report on that?
We did. We had the 8th annual Run Like a Mother event, and we had over 400 participants, runners and walkers. Turned out to be a beautiful day, and also like to thank all the people who helped and all the runners who participated and walkers who participated. Special thanks to Lake St. Clair Metro Park, Macomb County CERT team, Fire Department, Parks and Rec volunteers, and all the community sponsors that helped make the event such a wonderful success. And one more note, this year's run was the race director, Diana Easthope. This was her last race as a director for the race. And without her, this event never would have happened. And she's been very instrumental in helping Parks and Rec raise all the money from this event goes to Parks and Recreation, so we are more than grateful to her. And we wish her all the best in the future and hope that she'll at least come by and make a special appearance at each race. Thank you, Diane.
Did you want to also mention anything about the fishing derby?
Yes. We also have our 9th annual Harrison Township Fishing Derby, which will be held at Lake St. Clair Metro Beach. June 8th, starts at 8 p.m. And 8, we're not night fishing, it's 8 a.m. and lasts till 11:30. And people who are fishing are asked to bring their own bait and come out for prizes and hot dogs and drinks, and usually turns out to be a great time, so hope to see everybody there. And there's also information, the flyer will be on the website, so you'll be able to get that, more information there. Thanks.
Excellent, all right. It's one good event down and one still to come. We also have representatives here from the Harrison Township Beautification Commission, and they'd asked to address the board and the residents, so we'll invite them up to the podium at this time. Dedicated group of volunteers that do an awful lot of good work here in the township to really spruce things up and truly beautify it. So we're grateful for them and see what they have to say.
I wanted to introduce the folks that are with me tonight. These are fellow Beautification Commission and volunteer workers, the beautification team, John Berger, Dolores Sack, my husband Jim Keene, and Lynn McAllister. All these folks have been working very hard on the recent project that's out the window here, the Veterans Garden. So we're really grateful that they're so diligent and have been real faithful at helping us get those gardens in shape. We're here today to tell you about what's going on with the Beautification Commission this year. Our major project right now is the Veterans Garden. The goal is to refurbish the beds. The majority of the beds will be done in blue cushion lavender and white roses. We also have poppies at the back that will kind of go through the lawn, and they'll get mowed down eventually. They bloom in the spring, but the lovely red poppies that are a symbol of the veterans. We have some little limelight hydrangea, Japanese forest grass, variegated iris, white alyssum. The roses are carpet roses and knockout roses. So I think it'll be a beautiful, serene setting and a really nice place to honor our veterans, something new and fresh. We've had many, many people help with this. Everybody in the township, thank you very much. Every day, someone from the township gives us support, whether it's Adam or Ken or Andrew behind me, or this morning we had Water and Sewage help us level the beds, and all of these folks behind me and several more who are not here today on the Beautification Commission. So thank you all very much. Couldn't do it without any of you. The garden is scheduled to be rededicated. That will be November 9th, a couple days before Veterans Day at 1 o'clock. That'll be on the website. Many, many folks donated, and that is on the website as well, but I really appreciated these folks donating to the Veterans Garden because we couldn't buy the plants without them. So I'd like to mention them.
Sure.
Wild Bill's Smoker Outlet, Smokers Outlet on Crocker, Metro Party Store and Bait Shop, Total Sports, Terry's Terrace Restaurant, Prentice Point Apartments, Poncho and Cisco's Restaurant, the River Rat Restaurant, Gowney Golf Course, Carlo's Pizza on South River Road, our State Representative Anthony Ferlini, Buscemi's on South River Road, McMacken Marina, the Snyder family, the Keene family, Jarvis Restoration, Fraternal Order of Eagles, 1269, Mr. and Mrs. Tom Baines, Wolverine Brooch, Belmar Harbor, Kroger's, and Greats Hardware. So thank you for all the donations that have come in so far. If anyone out there would like to donate in the community, please send your checks, whatever you can afford, to the attention of Veterans Garden or Beautification Commission, and we'll make sure they get in the right spot. Another reason we're here today, beyond the Veterans Garden, is to talk about the Great Gardening Program that we did last year. We're gonna do that again. Last year, we put these lovely Great Gardening signs on folks' lawns, those folks who the Beautification Commission thought deserved a pat on the back for the lovely job they did in their front yard, or whatever kind of gardening they did, whether it was container or terrific pruning, or whatever it happened to be. Our commissioners and volunteers noted what they liked, put a little note on the door saying, thank you very much for doing this, with a phone number if they needed a contact to talk to. And this little sign will be laminated, sticking somewhere in their front yard. So we're gonna do that again because we got such a great response for it. 300 folks this time. So we're looking forward to it, and look in the yards and neighborhoods and see if you can't identify some of those signs out there. Another project we did this year was the perennial garden at 16 and Crocker. I just wanted to note that because it is brand new and it's growing rather rapidly. We're pretty proud of it. There was a huge tree there that had to come down. We've expanded it and added many, many perennials, so that should be a lovely pow of color as you hit the township border. So we're looking forward to that developing. We had donations for all of that, and the Beautification Commission worked very hard to put that in. We are having a plant exchange on October 5th at the Tucker Senior Center from 9 to 11. I mention it now, because if you're splitting your plants, you might want to hold off a little and bring them to the plant exchange on October 5th. So we'll also put these dates on the website. As we were working through the township, and still are, this particular commission noticed a lot of litter. We've been very diligent about picking it up as we go, so I kind of wanted to appeal to all the folks out there to bring a bag with them when they're walking on the bike path. Pick up the litter as you go if you see something. This is a beautiful township. We end up seeing all kinds of litter blowing throughout different parking lots and on corners and that kind of thing. If we all do a little due diligence, it'll keep it looking absolutely lovely. So I just wanted to, in review, say we're gonna get that Veterans Garden looking great for you. We're gonna do a great gardening program that I think everyone will enjoy. We have a beautiful new perennial garden. We're going to do a lovely plant exchange and a nice rededication of the garden out here, all with all of your help. So got some great ideas from all the folks at the township, and we thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys do a great job. Thank you very much. I know in the thank yous on the 5 and 10K run, one of the parties that wasn't mentioned was the Sheriff's Department. They did come out. We had deputies come out and assist with the traffic control. We also have some representatives from not only the Sheriff's Department, but also the Macomb County Jail. There are volunteers that they'll bring out to do some cleanup. So I know that we've got a crew of workers coming to our township through the Sheriff's Department. And I know one of the places they're gonna spend some time on is the bike path. So we're fortunate to have those volunteers who would like a chance to get out in the sunshine instead of sitting in the dark and volunteer their time. So we're appreciative of that service they're gonna bring for us too. Certainly, again, though, thanks to Beautification. Are there any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is item B1 from the Accounting Department. Mr. Witt, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. At the April 22nd meeting, we asked for permission to post for a senior accountant bookkeeper in the accounting position as a result of an employee retirement in June. We had 2 internal candidates apply when we posted the position. Based on experience, we would be recommending that the board approve promoting Lucy Ayudo, from, she's in Darren's office and the treasurer's office right now as an account bookkeeper, and she's done a lot of similar work both there and in the water and sewer department. So we believe that she would be the best choice for the township to move into that senior account bookkeeper position. That promotion, and we had talked about this internally as far as timing, I know we're gonna try and work on making sure she's trained before the employee retires and working amongst myself and Darren and, Mr. Spencer to make sure that we have coverage and we're able to get them trained so there isn't a drop off in that department. But once that goes into place, they would be subject to a 30-day trial period. And as far as timing of the actual move, it's sort of dependent on other internal movements because it's a position moving, and I think we're gonna discuss that later on under the treasurer's office item, so.
Well, I know we had a little bit of discussion on this. My recollection was that this actual promotion might not necessarily be official until, I thought we had discussed, until such time as the position is vacated. So I don't know that she has to
Yeah.
officially get that promotion at some date or some particular point. But she can certainly spend some time in there. I thought that was kind of one of the things that we discussed.
Right.
So I don't know if we want to, if the motion should include a specific date for that promotion.
I don't think it needs to, I just wanted to, in case the board had a question on when it was happening.
Well, I think that, we had discussed this, and I think, obviously, when you're doing a promotion, we always, at the earliest, it would be on the day that the other person retires, which is June 21st, just so the board knows. And, we sent her over there today, and I
Yeah.
think she was there most of the day,
Yeah,
actually, working on the pension checks. So,
All right, any questions, discussion, or a motion?
so do we want to put a date on it, or, and just for the record, I'm hoping that the board votes no on this. Lucy's a great asset to the treasurer's office,
That's right.
just for the record.
So if we approve it as written, basically we leave it up to our leaders to determine when and how the organizational changes will take place. So
Yeah.
I think putting a date on it is really not a good practice at this point. So
Okay.
with that said, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the promotion of Lucy Ayato to senior account bookkeeper in the accounting department, subject to a 30-day trial period.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support.
Support from Mr. Brado. Any discussion? Didn't expect to hear any or any issues.
So sort of knowing that we have a little bit of time here, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Yep. So I don't think it's gonna happen tomorrow. I think we'll coordinate pretty well on that.
Middle of June.
Yeah, it may very well be that last date as you discussed, but we'll make that, known, through the channels.
Well, I don't want to wake up, tomorrow we get in a political fight and then someone says, oh, by the way, she's leaving today. I mean, that's just the way it
No.
works.
Nah, I don't think so.
no, I think the day she applied, I can't, you and I had talked, we wanna make sure that we have the training, but we don't lose coverage in any of the departments.
Yep, because this whole, not unique to other, union environments, this creates a void in another department, that has to be filled, and so I know there's another agenda item to discuss that, so I think we're looking to say that internally we'll manage that so to have the least amount of impact to each department as possible.
Right, well, at the bottom line is we've always done these, even though we train somebody internally, we never pay somebody more until that other person leaves.
Yeah,
Is when,
yep.
that's just always been our
Yep,
practice.
I agree with that, and I thought, we had discussed it, but
Yeah,
I'm
that's
good.
fine.
I think the
that's
motion reflected the trust that the board has in the full-timers to manage it. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Brado to approve the promotion of Lucy Ayudo to senior account bookkeeper in the accounting department, subject to a 30-day trial period. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
I wanted to vote no.
I know.
I didn't feel it was appropriate.
But I don't blame you. If she were in my department, I'd feel the same way. She's a great employee.
Absolutely.
Next on our agenda is item C1 from the fire department regarding a purchase of an ambulance. Chief Lopez, I'll turn it over to you if that's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, board members. As you know, several months ago, the board created an ambulance purchasing committee to explore the replacement of one of our ambulances. That committee was, as you know, comprised of Mr. Swakowski, Mr. York, Mr. Brado, and firefighter Matt Zarnicki, as well as myself. And we've met on 3 occasions and brought forth a recommendation for replacing one of our ambulances. And in your board packet, I prepared a summary of our meetings and the process that we undertook to find that replacement. And I will go through that and summarize those findings for you. The Harrison Township Fire Department has 3 ambulances, and we operate on a 15-year projected lifespan. 10 of those years, the ambulance serves in frontline service, and in the last 5 years, it serves in backup or reserve service. So our 3 current ambulances that we have right now, we have a 1997, a 2003, and a 2005 ambulance currently. The 1997 ambulance was actually scheduled based on its lifespan to be replaced last year. We ran a little behind schedule, so we actually ended up getting a 16th year of service out of that vehicle. So that was the ambulance that we're proposing to replace is the 1997 AEV. The committee, we looked at options in terms of, the first thing we looked at is the size of the vehicle that we wanted. There's some options there. We currently own 2 heavy-duty chassis ambulances and 1 medium-duty. Looking at it, we felt it was advantageous to maintain that 15-year life cycle, projected life cycle. And in order to do that, the most economical way we found to do that would be to downsize from the heavy-duty to the medium-duty chassis. That represents a cost savings, but it still allows us to maintain that 15-year lifespan. We felt to go to a lighter-duty style ambulance, that there are some examples that are on the road, while it would save money, would significantly shorten the lifespan of the vehicle. So based on a medium-duty chassis, we then began developing specs for that ambulance. That's where firefighter Zarnicki did the majority of the legwork on that process, and we looked at what a number of departments throughout Southeast Michigan were using for ambulance specifications. We found that the Shelby Township Fire Department specs were really the closest to meeting our needs, and so we based our specifications on their base specs with a couple of modifications. One of the big modifications that we made was eliminating a system that they have called the VMUX system, that was a touch screen system, electronic system for controlling the lights and other features in the vehicle. We chose to eliminate that in our spec and go with standard, the old-fashioned rocker switches. It represented a cost savings, and we also felt it eliminated what would potentially be a maintenance item, given the fact that we keep our ambulances for a longer lifespan than Shelby does. So we wanted to go as low maintenance as possible. Another item that we looked at is the issue of whether to go, when you have, with diesel engines, you have to go with an emission standards. And one method of meeting the emission standards is using a urea system. Some manufacturers choose that. Other manufacturers choose an exhaust gas recirculating system. There's pros and cons to each. We felt, based on the interviews that we had with other fire departments as well as with our mechanics, that the international chassis that uses the exhaust gas recirculating was the best option. And with that, we chose to go with the medium-duty international TerraStar chassis. It's a relatively new chassis. However, you're seeing them, they're becoming very common in the industry. Not only in the ambulance industry, but also you'll see them with delivery trucks. The Red Bull truck that drives up and down Jefferson every day is on a TerraStar chassis. You may have seen that. So we went with that along with the base Shelby Township specification, customized, developed our Harrison Township ambulance spec, and then at that time sent it out to a number of different manufacturers. And there were 5 selected that we sent it out to. And as you would see in the report, of those 5, we disqualified one based on findings that they did not possess a Michigan business license. Another of those vendors chose not to respond. We followed up with emails and phone calls and they chose not to submit a quote based on our specification. So we received 3 quotes back from a company called Mark, a company called Wheeled Coach, and a company called PL Custom. And you'll see in there that the Mark quote came back as the lowest quote at $167,753. The Wheeled Coach was $174,885, and the PL Custom was $185,391. The Mark quote, however, we ran into some considerable difficulties in getting a correct quote from them. They had to re-quote the job on 3 different occasions due to errors. And then at the 11th hour, they came back to us and asked for another submission because they felt they could save money on the chassis. We allowed them that, and then when we reviewed the chassis that they had spec'd out for the reduced cost, we found that that also had, I want to say, over 30 items deficient that we found on that. So we had some serious reservations. And then upon further review, we find that the actual box to that ambulance also didn't come back fully meeting our specifications. So despite the fact that they are a few $1,000s below the Wheeled Coach quote, we felt that there were some significant problems with their quote that they gave us. In addition to that, the difference in the warranty, the Wheeled Coach has the best warranty of the 3. They have the shortest build time of the 3. A couple of other items that we felt significant about the Wheeled Coach ambulance. One was the Cool Bar air conditioning system that Wheeled Coach provides. That actually mounts the air conditioning system above the cab as opposed to underneath the chassis. And again, given the fact that we're projecting a 15-year lifespan, which is significantly longer than most of the surrounding departments, that amount of time being exposed to the salt and winter conditions in Michigan, we had some serious reservations of mounting that system underneath the chassis, and we really like the fact that Wheeled Coach has that mounted above. It also has an air filtration system that exceeds the government specifications for filtering out airborne contaminants. So, which is very critical when you're dealing with patients that could have an infectious disease, and we have an extended amount of time with them in the back of the ambulance. So, along with that, the fact that Wheeled Coach was the only of the companies that was also ISO certified, those things all combined made us feel that Wheeled Coach was the best option. In addition, one of our ambulances that we currently have right now is a Wheeled Coach ambulance, and we've had good success with it. We've been very happy with that. So those things all considered, the committee felt that it was in the best interest to recommend the purchase of the Wheeled Coach Type 1 ambulance at the cost of $174,885. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the board? If not, is there a motion?
I did have a couple of small questions, not really. The expected delivery date on this? I didn't see it. I seen it on one of the other quotes, but not on this particular one.
The Wheeled Coach was a 90-day build time, and I'm anticipating in talking with the salesman that we would have that vehicle in service licensed by Labor Day is my hope.
And then the existing unit that is no longer valid for us, are we gonna trade that in or sell it, or what's the thought on that?
Once we would receive the Wheeled Coach ambulance and have it, we would transfer the equipment over and have it fully in service and licensed. We're going to propose selling the 1997 AEV ambulance.
And is there some projected value for that, or?
I would, between $10,000 and $20,000, hopefully get $15,000 for it, just would be my projection at this point.
Yeah, we're not sure. We're gonna
It's not-
take your best guess, kind of look at what the prevailing numbers are at that time.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Jared had a good idea. The library can use it as a bookmobile.
Air conditioning, nobody will ever leave, you know? Is that
That's
it?
it for me.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I'll make a motion to purchase a 2014 International TerraStar Wheel Coach Type 1 ambulance from Emergency Vehicles Plus for a cost of $174,885, with the money to come from the existing fire department budget.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Brado. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Swakowski.
Do we want to include in the motion, approval to sell the other one at this time? Because, I mean, it's a pretty large piece of equipment. You would have to come back for permission. I mean, it's not going to stick around. There's no reason that we wouldn't sell it. Consider amending that.
Yeah, I would.
So maybe amend the motion to include, and to, sell the 1997 ambulance upon receipt and, checkout of the new unit? Is that a fair amendment?
Yes.
Continued support? Okay. Any discussion, board members? We'll open up the floor for public comment.
Bill Serville, resident. While I understand there may be a need for this ambulance, my question is, the fire budget is already in a pretty big time deficit right now. Where is this extra $175,000 coming from? It's not there. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. Chief, do you have any numbers relative to current fund balance or anything in that regard?
Yes, sir. The current fund balance for the fire department is $1,440,408 at this time.
So out of approximately 1.4 million of fund balance, the 175,000 would come out of that,
That's correct, sir.
which is in essence an accumulated fund balance from history for, amongst other things, vehicle replacement and purchases.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, because of declining property values and as a result, declining revenue from the levied millage, we haven't been able to add to that fund balance, and in fact, in some years, we've actually taken away from that fund balance. The last year, I believe we were able to add to the fund balance was 2009. But those resulting surplus years and the ability to put in funds for vehicle equipment replacement allow us to do that now. So hopefully that answers the resident and possibly some other residents' questions regarding where the funding might come from. Are there any other comments? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Brado with support by Mr. Swakowski to purchase a 2014 International TerraStar Wheeled Coach Type 1 ambulance from Emergency Vehicles Plus for a cost of $174,885, with the money to come from the fire department budget. Also, included in the motion is a direction to the chief to sell the 1997 ambulance upon receipt and checkout of the new unit. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board.
Thank you, board members. And if I may, Mr. Supervisor, I'd just like to thank Mr. York, Mr. Swakowski, and Mr. Brado for their service on that committee. And also a big thank you to firefighters Zarnicki, who has done a tremendous amount of work and research and finding a good ambulance. So thank you.
Thank you to everybody involved. Next on the agenda are some appointments. Item D1, Mr. Witt.
Yes, the clerk's office has received the annual request from Lake St. Clair Metro Park to appoint the ordinance officers for the park. The request is to appoint Ms. Laura Cucciara and to reappoint Mr. Matthew Carr and Mr. Ryan Bozich for 2013. Those are one-year terms. The appointments allow those officers to ticket for township infractions within the Metro Parks boundaries. So I'd make that motion to appoint Mrs. Cucciara and the reappointments of Mr. Carr and Mr. Bozich as ordinance officers for Lake St. Clair Metro Park for a one-year term to expire May 31st, 2014.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello. Any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is item D2. Mr. York?
Yes, there was actually, quite a long time ago, Mr. Gaber, who used to be the deputy treasurer, sat on the cable board, and we do the cable, and, so there's a empty seat on that, a vacant seat, so I turned in, to sit on the cable board.
Supervisor will make a motion to appoint Darren York to the Harrison Township Cable Committee as board liaison. Term to expire 8/8/2014.
Got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Swakowski. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Next, item D3, regarding ordinance officer. Board members, due to Sandra Mutter's retirement, we have a need to fill the appointment of the Deputy Noxious Weed Commissioner. I would recommend the appointment of Stephen Sternicki as Deputy Noxious Weed Commissioner for the remainder of a 2-year term to expire May 14, 2014.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. York, is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Caprell. Discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, just clarification,
Yes.
Mr. Prock then will remain as the noxious weed commissioner through that date as well?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Caprell to appoint Stephen Sternicki, Ordinance Officer, as the Deputy Noxious Weed Commissioner for the remainder of a 2-year term to expire May 14, 2014. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, next on the agenda is item E1. Mr. York?
Yes, with Adam
Stealing your employee? Is that what you're going for, yeah?
poaching would be a good word. With Lucy receiving a promotion into the accounting department, that leaves a vacancy at the account bookkeeper position. And due to the position that Lucy's going to is a pretty critical position in the township. It's a position that does payroll and those type of items, does the journal entries. That left a vacancy in our department. I spoke with Adam and Ken, and time is sort of the essence now, having that move and this June 21st date. So we went ahead and posted the position on the board for 5 days, and we did receive 2 applicants. I've not interviewed those 2 applicants. I wanted to wait till this meeting. That posting ended on Friday. Hopefully we will accept one of those 2 employees. Both of those employees are from the building department, which is gonna leave a vacancy in the building department, assuming that the board approves the position. So what we'd also like to do is have post and at the same time put out, we do not believe that there's gonna be an applicant within the township that takes that position. And that position's also gonna need to be trained. We have this bumping going on. And what we'd like to do is post for the 5 days per the union contract, whichever position in the building department becomes vacant. And we'd also, at the same time, like to go out to the MML, and obviously that's Mr. Burkess's office who handles this, but go ahead and start soliciting for applications for anybody that might be interested in that job, because the time is gonna get of the essence here. Trying to get everybody trained. And we are working together as the full-timers. hopefully we'll have smooth transitions and most important thing is I'm mostly worried about the building department. I can probably get by a few weeks at the end of the day, with just Jared, myself, and Katie. If it comes down to that in the building, I'm more worried about that building position. So that's where we're at.
Yep. So kind of to add to that or expound on that a little bit, the, the opportunity for internal applicants to, to take this opening, that, that's somewhat a part of the, contract. If we have a candidate that simply doesn't qualify, then that's a whole nother matter. But Ms. Ayudo qualified for the opening in accounting, so we've already approved that. We've got 2 applicants, both of which we believe would be capable of filling that position. The contract lists as the primary deciding factor qualifications, and then secondarily seniority. So because of that qualifications, the treasurer had mentioned, and the clerk and myself agreed that we should go through somewhat of an interview process, meet with each applicant and then make that final decision. But because we have 2 good internal applicants, there'll either be an opening in this chair in the building department or that chair in the building department. So some of this is somewhat automatic, I suppose. In other words, we're asking for concurrence, but ultimately what we're really looking for is to kind of inform the board of the action we're taking. And the next step is gonna be posting it internally, but also because we expect, like the treasurer said, start the advertising process, so that maybe not at our next meeting, but possibly 4 weeks from now, we could have a recommendation for who that hire would be. The important date that we're working toward is June 21st. That's the last day of one of the employees that's gonna be retiring, that's kind of produced all this. So we're trying to make sure that we have all those steps in place, so by the time June 21 comes, we've had the opportunity to have our internal employees have a chance to train, and then be prepared to hire that external employee and get them in a position to train before everybody moves. So ultimately, what we're looking for at this point is as you've indicated, to concur really for the posting of the account bookkeeper, also to concur with that choice that the 3 full-timers would like to make on the 2 internal applicants. Third, to post, advertise, and interview internally as well as externally for one of the department head secretaries in the building department with with that final decision to come back before the board, in the event that it's an outside candidate. So that's really what we're looking at this point. That would be the appropriate motion, kind of 3 steps there.
And there's another step, actually.
Okay, all right.
Whoever that internal applicant, we're gonna bring them back at the next board meeting for approval.
Yep.
Obviously, it's 2 weeks from now, so.
And they're not likely to even take that position before we'll meet again. So we're gonna come back with that recommendation, but basically now we've got an internal applicant. We'll bring that back 2 weeks and say, here's who we chose. But in the meantime, we don't wanna wait a whole nother 2 weeks before we begin the posting and advertising process to fill that chair. So that if we were really good, we'd have a recommendation in 2 weeks, but not likely. But at the first meeting in June, if we were able to make a recommendation, we'd be in pretty good shape to be able to fill that in a timely manner. So that's ultimately what a proposed motion would be. I don't know if there's discussion or if someone's willing to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur with the 3 full-time officials to post, advertise, and interview for an account bookkeeper position in the treasurer's office.
All right, and then if I may, I'll offer a friendly amendment to include also to concur with the choice of one of the 2 applicants with that the choice of the 3 full-timers of one of those 2 applicants, with that to be brought back before the board, and also to concur with the action of posting and advertising to fill that seat, with that to come back before the board.
Fine.
Good? Okay. All right, we got a motion by Mr. Swakowski. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Tominello. We discussed that one pretty good, but there could be some questions or discussion. Is there any? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. All right, almost last on our agenda is item F1 regarding our millage. Board members, as you know, we had our first budget workshop, well, I wrote last week, but that was a couple weeks ago now. And we've begun the process of working on the 2014 operating budget. That budget, as it was proposed, was based on the 6.67 mills that we've had in place since, I believe, '05. A little bit of history. The library committee did some exploration, went through a process of collecting some signatures, and they'd like to bring a millage proposal forward on the August ballot. That's the legal process that they're allowed to do. They've looked at that because there's been some discussion at the state level of changing what procedures you need to follow to collect petitions and put something on the agenda, or on the ballot. So, failure to act at this point, there could result in a change at the state level that could prevent that. Although nothing's been determined yet, there's been some discussion. So we know that we've got an item that's gonna be on the ballot in August. So it makes sense that if we're gonna have an election, that we wanna combine our millage election on the same ballot. Otherwise, we're gonna end up paying for an election in August as well as one in November. So we've got one election for the library in August. Therefore, we might as well put our millage question before the voters at the same time so as to not have two elections. As a result, even though we're not finished with our budget, I proposed what the budget looked like a couple weeks ago, and proposed that we renew the millage at 6.67 mils. We have another decision to make, and that is whether we look at a 1-year, a 2-year, or a 3-year millage. And of course, this board has discussed this several times in the past. 1 year puts us to an even election year, which is 14, where there's already another election that's going to be on the books for the state senate and the governor's election. So there'll be a primary and a general election in August and November of next year. So one option would be to go 1 year. Another option would be to go 2 years, and then a third would be, of course, to go 3 years. If we go 2 years, we're going to be back in the same cycle where we have a special election, or we don't have an election to combine with other elections. So really, the choice would be either 1 year or 3 years at this point. Based on my look at the budget, the discussions that we've had, and also from the budget workshop, we know that 2014's taxable value is down from this year, but we also heard that the assessor's best estimate at this point, our assessor has 6 months of data that'll be used to establish the 2015 taxable value and our resulting millage revenue. The projection is potentially a 2.5% increase from 2014 to 15. So where we are in 13, I believe the drop was 2.2 or 2.3% to 14. So we're looking at a rebound in 15, back to about where we are this year, perhaps a little bit greater. So that's what the next few years look like, next couple of years. So in the past, this board's been steadfast about not raising the millage level. Because of that, and because it has been the same since 2005, I'm proposing renewing it for 3 years. That would put us back on the even election cycle. We have to have our language ready by May 28 in order to be included on the August 6 ballot, giving some time to the clerk to be able to present it to the county. Probably fair to say to this board that we do have potentially the option of bringing the millage question before this board. Our next meeting is actually 2 weeks and a day because of the holiday. That would put kind of a squeeze on the clerk, but I wouldn't say it's impossible to do. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if this board, through this discussion, decided that they weren't prepared to take any action today, I want to make sure that the board is fully aware that we could potentially, at the very last, as close as it could be, discuss this at our next meeting, which is about 15 days away. In the board packet, I had included a resolution and the potential language. Our counsel had reviewed that. He was unable to take a look at it before I submitted it because of a prior commitment. We talked about it since then, and we have really not changed it in substance. Our concern was our millage has consistently had a number of mills for police, a number of mills for fire, and a number of years for general. Last year, the language was renewed, but we said 5.0435 for fire, 1.6265 for police, and 0.00 for general. So I said, well, if it's 0, I'll remove it. The attorney's advice was, hey, if it's a renewal, keep it in there even if you have a 0. So it seemed to make sense to us. So everybody was given a copy of the language, just putting back in the 0.00 mils for general. So the numbers are the same, the duration is the same, but we added back in the language, instead of just saying police and fire, now it says police, fire, and general business, even though that's 0.00 mils for general. So that's where we're at. We've got a before you language for a renewal, 6.67 mils, and at this point, because that's a requirement of my office, I'm proposing 3 years. We talked about it a little bit in the budget workshop, and I proposed to all the trustees or board members to give it some thought, and it's gonna be on the agenda today, so there it is. So I'll open that up then for discussion. That's kind of the history anyways.
Mr. Chairman, at the April 30th budget workshop, when we were presented this budget, it does contain the same millage as we have since 2005. The millage for fire and police are the same as they were for 2013.
Yes, sir.
However, it was, stated at that meeting that the fire department budget basically to come in at this 5.04 would be a reduction in force. I understand that negotiations are pending with the firefighters. Don't know what the outcome of that is going to be. However, looking and reviewing things, I looked at the last time there was any increase in our taxable value was 2009. Since then, our taxable value has decreased 21.6%, and we're still operating at the same millage. And looking at different things in the fire department, the last time any money was put in the fund for retiree health insurance was in 2010. It was $166,000. So for 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, there's no money, excuse me, set aside for that obligation. Also, there are things that we're going to be facing, which are accumulated leave payoffs on retirements. There is no money in the budget to handle that. There's also certain items that there's no money in the budget for capital improvement, whether it be emergency equipment or building repairs. Some of the things that were brought to my attention was the floor sinking at the Jefferson Station. Station is built on pilings, but yet the floor is sinking. There are other things that, as far as leaking roofs and things like that, parking lot. None of that is there. Granted, we have some fund balance. Just a few minutes ago, we approved unanimously purchasing an ambulance to run the advanced life support system that's been in place in this community by the people, for the last 40 years. My concern is to have enough people to man that equipment. Will the millage and what we have here, and even what we save in a contract, achieve what we want? My opinion is no. We will not get that. I think we need a stopgap measure, say for the next 3 years, to somehow set at a maximum that would not have to be assessed at the maximum based on what could be achieved in contractual negotiations. So if, you know, you had a half mil set aside on a special millage for 3 years, and you said, we achieved X amount through the contract negotiations, therefore, we can maintain our manpower, our staffing, we don't have to worry about running short, you know, just like what happened on Saturday. You've got one vehicle at the Run Like a Mother race, one is out on a heart attack, and when you have somebody who ruptured a natural gas line inside their home, the best we could do is send a pickup truck with one man and have to depend on an outside community to come in. Granted, we have a automatic mutual aid, but still, when you have people coming in from other communities, they're not as familiar with the streets, so time is of the essence. You know, I believe in letting the people decide what level of service they want to have. You know, right now, what we are running with is 27 fire suppression personnel. We have no, so to speak, administrative personnel. Those have all been gone by the wayside, so, you know, through a matter of negotiations, the full-time inspection or training officers, those were all incorporated back into line positions. So, excuse me, we have 27, we have minimum staffing of 6, a reduction in force is going to be the 3 people at the bottom who are the lowest paid. So, you know, there's a figure there that will not generate probably maybe what we need with this millage. The other thing then, to maintain the efficiency and everything, we're gonna have an increase in overtime. That's gonna come automatically. So, I guess I'm proposing a stopgap measure, you know, for the next 3 years.
Okay, and I understand that, and just a point of clarification, so if it were a half mil and we were to get to some point in our calendar, and I'm gonna kind of look to Mr. Huth for that, and we were to determine that that number is .28, what you're proposing is if the voters approve up to a half mil, the board might only levy .28 if that was the number that was required,
That's correct.
right? Mr. Huth, I hope I'm not familiar, I mean, I know that can be done, but just expound a little bit, maybe, or you could tell us, is there a point, I mean, when do we determine that, by December 31st? Or when is that point that we have to say what that number would be?
I think when we approve the budget.
Yeah, that budget, good question. The budget approval is in,
It's right up till the end, right
Right up
till
to the
the end of the calendar year. That's why I'm kind of curious, just curious of what that timing is. I think
yeah,
that's a
and I
valid
don't know
question.
precisely, so I don't wanna guess, but it's right at that period. My only concern is, just some of the things I can think of in the past with budget and millage questions here in Harrison Township. It sure would be nice to know the number that you're putting on here, because in the history, it seems like the voters have been suspicious of authorizing up to X and leaving it to the board, maybe not to levy all the way to X.
Mhm.
You know, if there was a practical way to get to that number and give that number to the voters, I think you have a better chance of being received, because everyone's all your cards are on the table then.
Correct. Well, and I think that's one of the difficult things about this process, because I'll say, and that's why I kind of asked about the timing. I would say within a relatively short period of time, we're going to engage in the negotiating process, and there's a finite amount of time that takes. If we're able to reach agreement and concessions, then that's great. I want to make sure specific to the budget, I've seen this done now 3 different ways, and I don't think any of them really works well, so let me back up. One of the earlier budgets that this board approved prior to negotiations, our previous supervisor had gone through and made, I guess you might say, certain assumptions as to negotiated savings. So you might come to a line item specific to vacation or holiday pay. I don't know, I don't want to get into specifics, and maybe we said, okay, well, that number is 0. So it's an assumption that can be negotiated away, which is difficult because that kind of skips over the negotiation process. When we led into something very similar with AFSCME and their most recent negotiations, I brought to this board a budget where I left all of their benefits where they were, but then had a line item for a target of savings, so that I wasn't specific in saying, you know, if the union says we're really beholden to our benefits, but we're willing to take a pay cut, and that gets us to our desired number, you know, kind of it's a, you know, all one pot of money, you know, what is it that group of people collectively bargained for? So that's the way I'd proposed it at that cycle. With this, it's true that the budget that I'd shown at our first budget workshop showed a reduction in force. I want to make sure that I reiterate what I said emphatically at that budget workshop, was that the goal of that budget, and the goal I believe I can collectively say of this board, is to not reduce the force. But it's difficult to say because of the rules with negotiating with public safety by the law. There's a negotiation process. If you're unable to reach an agreement, then you have arbitration, and the result of that arbitration is binding. So the potential exists that, and I'm speaking in very round numbers, we could begin negotiations with the firefighters in the month of June. We could reach the month of, I'm going to say August or September, and say, well, we've gone as far as we can go, and neither side is satisfied with that progress. We still have a gap. We then go through the arbitration process, which consumes a certain amount of time. So the concept of being able to say that if we go through negotiations and we go through arbitration if necessary, which is the step established by the state of Michigan, and we find that we're still not where we need to be, and you know, we don't have the savings that we have, I would much rather at that moment be able to say to the voters, well, look, we've done everything we could through negotiations and through binding arbitration, and unfortunately, at 6.67 mils, we're 300,000 short, and the only way we can get that at that point, the only tool available to us is a layoff. I mean, unfortunately, that's the one last measure that this board possesses. So we can't say, well, I don't care, we negotiated a $5 pay cut, we took it to the arbitrator, and the arbitrator disagreed, so I'm gonna cut your pay by $5 anyways. We don't have that legal authority. So, and I know this board knows this, but for the value of the residents. So at that point, the only tool available to us would be layoffs. I would love to be in a position where we go through every step we can to try to reduce our costs to provide 27 personnel, which is the level we've had for many years, keeping basically the same level of service. And if we can't do it on 6.67 mils, and we've gone through every step and we've taken it through the state mandated process of binding arbitration, and only then we are unsuccessful, then I would love to be able to say to the voters, well, the only way we can balance the budget at this point is to lay off 3 guys. Do you want to lay off 3 guys, or do you want to approve 0.29 mils, which is what it works out to? That would be the ultimate. Now, we can do that, I suppose, one of 2 ways. One option is to look at a number that's greater, as Mr. Swakowski said, and then back into the appropriate number. That's legally possible, right, Mr. Huth? I mean, you're voicing concerns about the likelihood of approving it, I think, but not its legality.
Correct.
And we might not know the exact date, but it isn't the day after tomorrow. It's going to be toward the end of the year. The other option is, that's before us, is we do have an election next year, to proceed with 6.67 mils. And if we find that at the end of this year we're not successful, then we can bring that option to the voters. In other words, this board could seemingly agree to go through the negotiation process and potentially the arbitration process. And if come December 31, we haven't achieved the savings, this board still has the ability to lay off or carry 3 men until August and bring to the voters and say, what do you want? And I understand that isn't the best one, and it doesn't cover some of the other concerns Mr. Swakowski pointed out relative to not funding for retiree health care, something we have been able to do on the general fund side, but not within the fire fund. And there may be some pending repairs, improvements to the building, you know, what we might call maybe some delayed maintenance. In and of itself, that's probably not the financial issue, but when combined with the pending thought of laying off and reducing the level of protection that we provide to the residents, you know, there are some financial burdens. So I guess if I might summarize, I don't like the idea of saying, going into negotiations and in a manner of my own personal summary, of saying, well, hey, we approve this millage, so we're gonna try to negotiate these savings, but if we don't get it, don't worry, we have that money. I'm not suggesting that that's what you're saying, Mr. Swakowski, so I don't want to imply that I'm saying that's what you are saying. But there's something to be said for negotiating with an eventual goal of trying to achieve savings with a target. But that's a decision that this board has to make, and then whatever that decision is, give to ultimately to the voters for them to decide. So we're not the final decision makers on how many mills are gonna be paid for this service. We can propose our best proposal to the voters, and they vote. So one option, I guess, 6.67 mills is, you know, we can almost say that's, we put that out there for 3 years. Are you proposing that you'd have a second number or a second question, Mr. Swakowski?
Yes.
Okay,
As a stopgap measure.
right.
You know, not to get too deep into the negotiation process.
Nope.
But just what you had said, to go into that with the money, it's the same thing that them knowing what's in this budget, what is the incentive for them to make any concessions if it provides for 3 layoffs?
To avoid those layoffs.
Yeah, I
You
would
know,
think that's,
I mean,
I couldn't state it better.
There's a
That's
position though, yeah, there's a position though, I'd rather have 24 healthy people than 27 people not, you know, I mean,
Sure, and that's.
or if they decide, you know, the question can always come up, you only saved X, we're still laying off 3.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's a double, so, I
Yeah.
mean.
No,
those
I
are
understand.
Negotiation tactics, and
No
those
question.
are things that are unforeseen.
Right.
But I'm saying, you know,
The best in the world would be that we could do all this in proper time, in its proper order. Unfortunately, like I say, that's the difficulty. So let me say this then, now that I understand, you know, I confirmed your issue. At this point, nobody has a problem with a 6.67 renewal. I mean, there may be, but I haven't heard that. The only question is whether or not, through negotiations, we can get close enough to not ask for some additional millage. And if so, what do we ask, and when do we ask, and how long do we ask it? So one option would be to include, kind of paraphrasing what you said, an additional millage to kind of get us through this low point, which has probably historically been a low point in revenue from millage. A second option that I threw out there, I guess, is to say that if we don't go into that in 2014, next August and next November, there already are elections on the ballot. So if this board chose to, just as an idea or just a suggestion, if we didn't include something like that for 14, we're gonna have basically a free shot at adding a question on, not 100% free, but relatively free option, to add a proposal or a ballot question to get that number. And there's a good chance that come August or November, we're gonna have a better idea of what that number might be. But I definitely agree with Mr. Swakowski that, you know, even with the budget as it's proposed, with 3 positions eliminated, no concessions, mind you, it's a loss of 3 positions, it's still a deficit, I think, of about 160, right in that range, and no additional funding for retiree health care, for infrastructure improvements, you know, relative to the building or property. We've had some delayed maintenance, And the budget, doesn't address that. So I can say I see your point. I'm not gonna, you know,
Well, if I may,
sure.
I will, since there doesn't seem to be a discussion, I will handle the first one.
Okay.
If I may, I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution placing the, and I haven't heard 3-year, is that?
Well, that's
does
what's
that seem
proposed,
acceptable
yeah.
to everybody? Placing the 3-year millage renewal question for 6.6 mils on the August 6th primary, election ballot.
All right, got a motion by Mr. York,
Support.
support by Mr. Witt. So relative to the motion to renew the 6.67 mils for a 3-year period, is there any discussion? That's the motion that's been made.
So I do have a problem, with the motion.
Okay,
We were at a budget review a week or so ago.
2 weeks.
We had a deficit not only in the fire fund, I believe we had either potential or current deficit in the, general fund as well.
Correct.
So we basically we looked at options, we talked about options. I know one of the options were to eliminate staff in the fire department, because that was the bigger deficit. My problem is, I like the 6.67 mils, I think that's a good move. I think 3 years with the deficits that we reviewed at that meeting are absolutely crazy. Why would we go for a mill at 6.67 for 3 years when we have no idea what's gonna happen over a 3-year period? It locks us in so much that if things continue to go down, I mean, we have projections they're gonna go up 2.5 in 2015, right? But there's no guarantee.
Yes, sir.
We don't know what's gonna happen.
Right.
So why would we wanna lock it in for 3 years? That gives us no flexibility at all. So I'm totally
I have
against
an
it.
Just we have total
I
flexibility
mean, we
because
have better-
like Ken said about the fire, we can go next year and say, oh crap, it all went away. We can ask for a buffer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So
This
the-
is the base that we're starting from, saying, you know, we're gonna try, we're saying to people, we're gonna try and keep it within the limits that we've set. But, you know, I think we're all responsible people, and if something happens, we're gonna go, you know what, we need more money.
I don't think people look at it that way. When you tell them 6.67 mils through 3 years, that's what they're expecting.
Sure.
They're not expecting you to come back after a year and say, well, guess what, now we have to go back and we have to, ask you for more money. I don't think that's the proper way to do it.
Understood, and I won't say this to try to convince you, right? Because I sat in, not literally your chair, but I sat in that chair down there as a trustee several times saying, look, these are difficult financial times, things are moving around, we've got changes in healthcare legislation that's gonna have an unknown impact on the cost of healthcare. And we have, property values that are fluid, we've got, Headley limitations and all these different things that are gonna have an impact, and the potential for changes at the state level, and who knows what impact that'll have. The flip side of that is, we've said that for several years, and we end up coming right back to this table saying, okay, let's go 6.67. So where I cross that line in feeling comfortable with 3 years is because for 5 years now, I've said, nope, renew it at 6.67. I don't see, knowing that next year, or the assessed values that we have coming are that low point, and we've got a lot of indicators that show that it's gonna be coming back, I don't see where I'm gonna be asking the voters for more than 6.67 mils moving forward. I'm trying to live within that. But if something happens that's either unprecedented or unpredicted, or call it whatever you want, we still do have that option to come back. So I understand what you're saying. If you say, hey, I can only predict for 1 year, go for a 1-year millage.
Right.
You can
So-
put it on the ballot in a year. I respect that. I've said
So
that.
maybe what you need to do, if you wanna go for a 3-year millage, maybe what you do is you do 6.67 for the first year, something greater in the second year, maybe back to 6.67 in the third year. What we gotta keep in mind, it's not only the fire deficit, it's not only general fund deficit. We're still looking at moving it to another building, there's expense there. There's improvements that we need to do around the township, to our township offices if we don't move. All that money needs to be addressed. The whole thing is, we are right at that cusp where, you'd have to dip in the general fund all the time to get all this stuff done. We don't know what the future holds, especially with the new administrative building, if in fact we go that way. So if you're gonna go for a 3-year, spell it out. If you need more money, I would rather be told, if you're gonna go for a 3-year, you're gonna do, you know, what you have this year, you know, half mil more the second year, and back to 6.7 the third year. I think that lends a lot more credibility with the residents as well. They know exactly what they're gonna get in the next 3 years.
Well, the only reason the largest reason that I'm against doing like a 1 year, because then that leads to another 1 year and another 1 year, and then we're stuck in these
Well, we've
odd
been
years.
doing- we've
But
been
I know,
doing
but
that
it's
for-
cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars because we're running these off-year elections that cost the clerk's office $25,000 to run, and that's just throwing money away. I mean, and
It's a valid point.
That was my argument last year.
Yeah, it's a valid point, and I argued on one side of it, you know, a few years sitting down there, and now I see the other side. So I mean, it's a tough one. It's not there's value to each side of that argument. There's value to saying, look, things are really tumultuous, you know. I would say that in the last few months, it's really the first solid signs that we've seen with that rebound in the real estate market and property values. We're seeing new construction. We're seeing the kinds of things, solid, concrete, that can give us a pretty high level of confidence that that's going to come back. But I appreciate your point. So let me just say this. We've seen a 2.3% decrease, or we're predicting that. We know it. We've got numbers for 14, from 13 to 14. From 14 to 15, we're saying, well, we think there's gonna be 2.5.
Yeah, but 2.5 is only 0.2% increase.
Understood. I
You know,
got you.
It's not 4.8%, because we're already at predicting 2.3 down for 14, and if you're going up 2.5, the increase is only 0.2. So, you know.
But
again,
Mr. Tominello's
as far
point,
as, you know, generating any funds, any valid increase in any funds for that is gonna be negligible.
right. Well, the years we're looking at are 14, 15, and 16. So, just out of curiosity, just kind of not to, you know, make this decision for you, but kind of looking at mathematically, if you said 6.67 and 16, right? Let's just say that third year of this, 6.67, I'm curious of what the number might be if you went 2.5% each year. Literally how many mills that would be. So,
Well,
it's
know,
about
here's the
0.17 mils.
Okay, I get it.
Yep.
So
So
I
if you
guess
said
the
0.2 of a
point-
mil.
Again, the point is, maybe if you do a 3-year, next year it's a half a mil more, and then the following 2 years is back down to 6.67.
Well, so what I'm
So,
saying, yep.
Okay, so however you bake it, you know, the whole thing is, if you give somebody and they give it to somebody and they know exactly what they're gonna pay
Mhm.
and what they're gonna be on the hook for, I think that holds a lot more credibility than going in there and saying, well, you know, now next year we're gonna have to bump it up, or we have to go 3/4 of a mil.
Mhm.
So, to me, you know, I like to know exactly what I'm buying when I go buy something, and that's my point.
I respect that. I get your point. If I, and again, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but if I were to expound on your concept, if we did look at a 3-year millage with ending at 6.67, 3%, kind of going backward in time, would give us 0.4 of a mil in 14 at 7.07, 0.2 of a mil in 15 at 7.87. I'm sorry, 6.87. And then in 16, 6.67 would put us back to that. So that would be, and I'm not saying that that's the exact figure, but that's the concept you're saying. Now you're telling folks, well, if we're gonna go out 3 years, we do see an increase in property values. So we got a lean year in 14, a little bit less in 15, and we're projecting a little even more so in
you can
16.
model it to your projections, yeah, however you cook it, again, you know, I just think, again, back to my thing, people need to know, and they don't wanna be, you know, they're gonna get skeptical for all of them, you know, 6.67, 3 years, everybody's going, all right, then next year we come back and we say, oh, by the way, now we need to be, you know, 6.89 mils. I don't think that's gonna hold a lot of credibility.
Right.
And I think the ultimate goal is to avoid, just personally, is to avoid
I
going back
get it.
and
I get it.
sticking with the 6.67. You know what I mean?
But- right.
I think we can work within that number still. I mean, yeah, the budget's early, and I mean, I don't think we've been working on a budget at this point in any year and not shown a deficit in some of the funds for the last
Right.
5-6 years, but, I mean, we ended the last couple of years of the general fund with a surplus.
Right, we've approved a balanced budget the last 2 years.
I
We've
get
had
it.
a six-digit surplus each of those years. The deficit that we show in the general fund is 60,000, but there is definitely in each pocket a little bit of conservative estimating on several different areas, so that we do end up with a surplus. So I'm not so worried about the general fund, but again, I recognize your point relative to, you know, are we gonna make an investment in another building and try to relocate? All I was gonna say was, if you said, all right, I'm looking at 3 years, and again, I'm, you know, just for discussion purposes, 7.07, 6.87, and 6.67, or I could state that same thing by saying renew 6.67, but then have what Mr. Switkowski proposed, let's say 0.4 of a mil in 14 and 0.2 of a mil in 15. And again, I don't know if those were his numbers, but I'm saying, if you said renew 6.67, and then secondarily, say 0.4 of a mil in 14 and 0.2 of a mil in 15, so that we could avoid any layoffs in the fire department. That's basically, we are at that point educating the voters, and they can say, we want to maintain that level of service. We see the value in that 0.4 and in that 0.2.
Sure. And I think the level of service in the fire department is paramount. I mean, I guess if I may ask a question of the chief. Chief, tell me, we're running 3 ambulances, right? 2 active and 1 sort of like a standby, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. So do you have statistics, can you tell me on how often both ambulances are out, not at the stations, available for Harrison Township residents, or maybe they're on runs for Harrison Township residents? How many times do you have, let's say, where you have no ambulances in the station, and you have to call other fire departments for assistance? Do you have those statistics?
I don't have them with me. I could tell you it's common.
Okay, so it's common, so,
It is.
so that's one of the things I wanna bring forward, okay? We are offering a fire service. And don't get me wrong, I know the fire, we need to look at trimming budgets, and I get it.
Yep.
And I think we all get that. But can we realistically say we have, you know, so we have great ambulance service, but are we gonna say that, by the way, on a certain percentage of the time, and whatever that is, we'd have to find out, there are no ambulances available that are gonna come and save your life?